What's happening, fight fans? Ryan Thomas here live for another episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. A lot to discuss in this episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. This part of the show be releasing pre-recorded clips of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. This will be one of them. You guys can throw down your comments in the comment section below, which I will answer on a separate note within the comment section. So if you guys have a comment that you want to throw it down in the comment section below, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or Facebook, and I will respond to it. As recent as 2-3 days ago, I was on Facebook and, I saw that Conor McGregor put out a tweet seemingly taunting Khabib Nurmagomedov about his deceased father. Late Monday night, McGregor responded to his longtime rival Khabib Nurmagomedov in response to Khabib's original tweet that said, "Good always beats evil." Conor responds, "COVID is good and father is evil," with a question mark. It was a statement that appeared to be a clear reference to Nurmagomedov's post earlier this month that followed the main event TKO victory of Dustin Poirier. The exact tweet was, "Good always defeats evil," from Khabib. Very happy for Dustin Poirier. I hope you will get the belt at the end of the year. Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov died this past year after testing positive for COVID-19 and then suffering a heart attack that forced him to undergo emergency bypass surgery. He was 57 years old. Prior to Nurmagomedov's passing, McGregor actually posted a classy message of support for Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, praying for the recovery of Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, a man responsible for more world champions across multiple fighting disciplines than we have even known. A true martial arts genius, very saddened upon hearing this news tonight, praying for the Nurmagomedov family at this time. And that tweet was originally posted in May of 2020. But as of recently, since the fight with Dustin Poirier, McGregor has taken a much different approach to the fight game and trash talk in and of itself. And in this episode, I will break down Conor's recent trash talk and what it means for his future, for his fighting career, and then some. So I appreciate you guys tuning in to this episode of the show. I want to start off by hearing a simple reaction and stating a simple reaction that was from former UFC heavyweight champion and former UFC light heavyweight champion, all-time great Daniel Cormier, as he gave his response to Conor McGregor's disturbing behavior, quote, disturbing behavior from Conor McGregor, and that, quote, "It's a cry for help." Simply put, it's a cry for help. Quote, Daniel Cormier here on the DC and RC show with Daniel Cormier and Ryan Clark on ESPN. I feel like from him talking about Dustin's wife to now Khabib's father, he's just taking it way too far. Cormier said on his ESPN show, when you're dealing with death and COVID and all these other things that we've dealt with over the last year and a half, that's all off limits. We talked about wives and families being off limits, but when you're talking about a man's everything, Khabib's dad was his everything, and you're talking about him being gone today due to something that has been so terrible for our entire world, you use that in a sense to get back. And Cormier made a great point that it's more disturbing that this wasn't done the day after the fight or the same night of the fight. This was done weeks after the fight. So it feels like it was thought of and it was thought through for Conor to tweet something like that. Absolutely crosses the line. And I think that when stuff like that is being said, it's a cry for help. Cormier went on to say that Conor has all the money in the world. He has all the fame. But now when you start to dig at that level, it's like somebody needs to get to McGregor and help him to start to kind of reshift his mind and focus to get him back into a better place. It's extremely unfortunate. So now we have a situation where not only is Conor McGregor's mind being questioned based on the trash talk that he has, put out these last few fight camps, last few months, I should say. But now we have a situation where his body is out of whack due to the injury that he suffered in his last fight against Dustin Poirier. And Daniel Cormier's reaction, to me, I agree with it 100%. Daniel Cormier's reaction was fair and was, I think, pretty actually upsetting, and in my eyes, come to the realization that Conor McGregor is just simply not the same guy that he was, 5 years ago. The trash talk then was about the sport. It was about becoming a champion. It was about being the best in the world. Now the trash talk is just trash talk, and it's just about family. And he's really pushing the envelope of trash talk, not really understanding who he really is in the fight game as he stands right now, due to the fact that he's on the outside looking in. He's ranked 7th in the UFC lightweight division now that he has lost to Dustin Poirier a second time in a row. Quote unquote lost. I don't weigh this last fight with Poirier, as a quote unquote loss for Conor. I view it as a TKO loss, in that term. But Poirier didn't exactly win either. So, that's my thoughts on that. But I did a podcast episode talking about whether Conor McGregor's career is over, whether this is the end for Conor, whether he can come back from this fight. And originally I thought to myself, yeah, you know what? He could come back from this. It's far from over. He's got this ability to be appealing to the masses in so many different ways. His bravado, his brash style, his cockiness has made him an attraction for so many years. But now that you're on the losing end and you're losing these fights in epic fashion, the stoppage loss to Poirier was a loss that was lost in epic fashion. The Floyd Mayweather fight being that it was such a high profile fight. Did we expect Conor to win that one? No. But Conor nonetheless lost in epic fashion due to the fact that you had more eyeballs on that fight than any other fight in boxing history. So more pay-per-view buys on that fight than any other fight in boxing history. So my take on the state of Conor McGregor's career is this. Do I believe that Conor's trash talk lately has gone way over the line? Of course I do. There is no shadow of a doubt in my mind that Conor McGregor's trash talk has closer and closer gone over the line, surpassed the line, drawn a line in the sand as far as the classiness or lack thereof that we have from Conor McGregor. Today's Conor McGregor. I fully believe that Conor has gone too far over the course of his last, 3, 4, 5 months. But will the UFC police trash talk in the ways that the NFL has policed political activism? I certainly hope not, because granted, yeah, it's gone over the line. It's not a good look for Conor. That's on Conor. That's not on anyone else. The UFC shouldn't have to police trash talk. When we start to talk about the UFC policing trash talk, that's when we really draw a line in the sand of this is not combat sports anymore. Trash talk is a major factor, as always, within combat sports. It has to remain that way in order for combat sports to continue on the form and fashion that it has the last, 50, 60 years, 100 years. So my take on Conor is this. I think Conor is lashing out with these over-the-line, crossing-the-line statements due in large part to the fact that he just does simply not know the state of his own career. There is so much uncertainty surrounding Conor, given the condition that he is in currently with a broken leg, with his leg wrapped up. How long is he going to be out? Is he going to be out for 6 months? Is he going to be out for a year? Is he going to be out for a year and a half? And when he does come back, will he ever be what he once was? And a lot of people questioned whether he was what he once was in his last fight before that, his fight before that. So there are a lot of questions surrounding the state of his career, whether he is done or not. I thought prior to this statement being made by Conor that, he was in the right frame of mind coming off of this loss, that he would regroup, rehabilitate, physical therapy, and put himself in line for another fight, next summer. And now I doubt very much so whether Conor McGregor could return to the fighter that he once was. And I doubt that due in large part to the fact that Conor feels like he has to force himself to have these moments of just sheer ignorance and incompetence. And yet, as many people support him today as they did 5 years ago, if not more. It's not a good look for the sport to make a joke out of COVID, make a joke out of a fighter's father dying from COVID, and it is not a good look for Conor's career to be on this losing end. He's making himself very tough to root for, even among his diehard fans. And even me myself, I've had people say, "How do you support this guy?" I took the fan hat off probably 3-4 years ago. In general, there is only one fighter that I can say, raise my hand and say that I'm a true fan of over every other fighter, any other fighter in UFC history, and that's George St. Pierre. He's retired. His career is over. He's gone. But yet, he's still my guy. I would love to see him come back and fight again in a dream world. I could see that again. But I also realize George St. Pierre is the greatest of all time, in my opinion. He did have a pretty damn good career. And why come back to potentially put a skid mark on your career that it just doesn't deserve, and it just doesn't even need? You don't even need to come back if you're George St. Pierre. You've made the money, and you've done what you've needed to do. In the case of Conor McGregor, I go back to the Floyd Mayweather buildup post his win over Eddie Alvarez, which still to this day is one of the more impressive fights I have ever seen, one of the most impressive big stage performances I've ever seen. I think the most impressive big stage performance that I've ever seen, given that was the first event at Madison Square Garden, UFC 205. The pressure was on Conor to achieve what he set out to achieve, becoming the first simultaneous champ in UFC history, winning the UFC featherweight title, winning the UFC lightweight title. The form and fashion that he did against Jose Aldo and Eddie Alvarez was extremely impressive. You knew that he'd take the superstardom to a whole new level, fighting Floyd Mayweather in his next fight. I was extremely worried and adamantly against the prospects of Conor McGregor fighting Floyd Mayweather, and I was worried due in large part to the fact that I knew the paycheck, the money bag, whatever you want to call it, the dollar bills that Conor McGregor would reel in from that fight would be so huge that it would hurt his mixed martial arts career. And I hate to say this. I really do. I hate to say this, but I was right. I was right. Conor McGregor fighting Floyd Mayweather in the impressive fashion that he did through the first 5 rounds aside, that fight set the stage for the Conor that showed up to fight Khabib, for the Conor that underestimated Dustin Poirier in the second bout, for the Conor that is now reacting to this loss in the worst of ways, making himself extremely difficult to root for, even among the diehard fans that he still has. And it's very frustrating. It's very disappointing to his fans, to podcasters, analysts like myself, whatever you want to call me. It's disappointing because Conor McGregor, with or without him, the UFC is not what it is today. With him, the UFC was sold for $4.25 billion. So, love him or hate him, that's just facts. Biggest draw in the history of the sport, what he's done to bring more eyeballs to the sport. I appreciate what he has done to raise the fighter pay scale. I appreciate as well. But this back end of Conor McGregor's career, mid-30s, 33 years old, recently turned 33, heading into 33, 34, he'll be back in the UFC octagon. He's going out of his prime. He's on the wrong side, as I like to say, of 30. And he's not doing himself any favors by reacting in this way to Khabib's tweeting. Good always defeats evil. That was what Khabib said. And Conor is making a case that he is evil. To make a joke, to make a mockery out of someone's death is not cool. It's not cool. It's not respectable. It is not something that I would ever want to see in this sport, that I love and appreciate what these athletes sacrifice and what they do. Trash talk is one thing. Trash talking your opponent and how he fights is one thing. But actually insulting a man's wife, insulting a man's deceased father, to me is just too much. And it shows that the state of McGregor's career is well known in his own mind, and Conor McGregor is lashing out. I agree with Daniel Cormier in the sense that this is a cry for help. A cry for help in the sense that, hey, help me. My career is floundering, so I'm just going to drag others down in the process. That's not the way a champion should react. Champion Conor McGregor reacted to losing to Nate Diaz by asking for that Nate Diaz rematch by the snap of his fingers as soon as that fight was over. That's the Conor McGregor that we need to get back. That's the Conor McGregor that I admired and loved to watch fight. This version of Conor is unfortunately the new Conor. I hope it doesn't last long. If it does, the state of Conor McGregor's career is in real trouble. I'm Ryan Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in to this recent episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, pre-recorded. So if you throw down a comment, feel free to throw down a comment. Follow me on Twitter at Ryan Thomas Take. Follow me on Instagram at Ryan Thomas Take. Greatly appreciate the love and support of each and every member of Combat Sports fans, Combat Sports world, whether you're a boxing fan or an MMA fan. I got a lot of boxing discussion to record on the show. Errol Spence Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao is coming up soon. Looking forward to that. Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, that fight, pushed to October. So, I'll be talking about that fight when the time is right. But for now, stay tuned for more episodes of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Of course, love to keep you guys up to date with my takes on any recent stories, fights, previews, and predictions. Greatly appreciate the support. Thank you. Keep punching.